What's up, sports fans? This is the Lucas Ross Sports Channel. We continue with our 2025 college football schedule preview and very early projected record series. The Boston College Eagles are up next. Before we look ahead to 2025, let's take a look back at what Boston College did in 2024. Here are my projections and predictions last year for Boston College. My projection had this team at 5-7, and then my prediction for this team was 6-6. So my difference here was my projection was not projecting them to make it to a bowl game, but then my prediction was predicting them to make it to a bowl game. And I talked about this Boston College team from last year, possibly a team that you don't want to play in the month of November. And Boston College, had a pretty solid year. Bill O'Brien, the head coach in his first year, led Boston College to a bowl game, but it was a 7-win season, a 7-5 record in the regular season, and then 7-6 overall if you count their bowl game loss at the end of the year. So yeah, Boston College did way better than my prediction and projections from last year in 2024. Again, it was a solid year for Bill O'Brien in his first year as the head coach for the Eagles. He got into this team, to a bowl game last year. Looking at the schedule for Boston College in 2024, again, they were 7-5 with this schedule, and you look at who they played in the non-conference. They had a tough non-conference schedule. They had Duquesne, an FCS opponent. That was the only easy game they had on the schedule. And then you got Missouri out of the SEC. They lost that game by 6 points. Beat Michigan State. They had them out of the Big Ten at home. Boston College beat them last year by 4 points. And then Western Kentucky. Boy, that Western Kentucky game was a close call there for Boston College. They won that game by 1 point. So, yeah, non-conference schedule ended up being a lot tougher for Boston College, but they were able to win 3 out of those 4 non-conference games. And I think if they probably would have lost maybe like 3 of those non-conference games, they probably could have not made it to a bowl game last year. But yeah, Missouri, Michigan State, and Western Kentucky, all quality teams in the non-conference. And then you take a look at their ACC schedule. First off, who they played at home last year. They played Louisville, Syracuse, North Carolina, and Pittsburgh all at home last year. So yeah, they lost to Louisville, so that was kind of a tough loss there, especially at home for Boston College. And then in the road schedule, they played at Florida State, at Virginia Tech, and then also at SMU. So yeah, they lost 3 games on the road last year in the ACC, but they had that big win over Florida State on Labor Day night. Of course, Florida State ended up being terrible, and they were coming off that loss to Georgia Tech. And yeah, Boston College just came in there and ran the football all over that Florida State defensive line, and then also just out-muscled the Florida State defense and also out-muscled the Florida State offense. So that was a schedule from last year in 2024 for Boston College. Let's now take a look at their 2025 schedule. Here is that upcoming schedule. Kind of a tougher schedule compared to last year. Before we go game by game, let's take a look at who Boston College's non-conference opponents will be this year. So this is their non-conference schedule. They will play Fordham, an FCS team, and then they got Michigan State again out of the Big Ten, but this time it will be on the road, so they will play the Spartans there at Michigan State. Then they got UConn, a pretty good group of 5 team, and then they got Notre Dame. So this is kind of a tougher non-conference schedule compared to last year. You got Michigan State, which is a very winnable game, but it is on the road. Again, it's going to be an even tougher game than it was from last year, but a game that Boston College definitely has a chance to win. Fordham, that should be a pretty easy game. And then obviously UConn. I wouldn't really sleep on this UConn team. UConn seems like they're heading in the right direction as a football program again. So yeah, that might not be an easy guaranteed win there for Boston College, but it's a game they'll probably still be big favorites in nonetheless. And then obviously Notre Dame is going to be the toughest non-conference game on here, but the good news is Boston College has it at home, so that might be a trap game for the Fighting Irish. But yeah, tough non-conference schedule though for Boston College. Let's now take a look at their conference schedule. We'll take a look at their home games in the ACC. They will play California, Clemson, SMU, and Georgia Tech. So not not a tough home schedule. You get Clemson at home, which I think is really good news. You don't have to play them in Death Valley. That's one of the toughest places to play in the ACC. Cal and Georgia Tech were pretty average teams last year. Those should be pretty even matchups. And then obviously SMU, that'll be a revenge game there for the Eagles. They lost to SMU by 10 on the road last year, so this time they will play them at home. So yeah, that'll be a big revenge game there for Boston College. But all in all, this is not a bad home schedule. Let's now take a look at their road games in the ACC. They will play on the road at Stanford, so you have to go out west there in that game, so that's going to be a long trip there for Boston College. Then you got Pittsburgh, Louisville, and then Syracuse. So these are all three tough games here on the road. Pittsburgh and Syracuse, I think, are very winnable games. They might be an underdog against the Louisville Cardinals, but that's a game that's on the road, so that's going to be pretty tricky. But all in all, Stanford, I know that game is out west, but that's a pretty winnable game. Pittsburgh and Syracuse, those two games are winnable games. And like I said, they might be an underdog against Louisville. You never know. But they can also probably pull off the upset. You never know. So that's your away schedule. Let's go back to the schedule now and go full game by game now for Boston College. They'll start things off with Fordham on August 30th. Should be a pretty easy win there for the Eagles. And then they go on the road to play Michigan State in this big non-conference matchup on September the 6th. Like I said, last year they beat the Spartans by 4. Then they go back on the road again to play Stanford this time. So they open up conference play with Stanford on the road on September 13th. So you got back-to-back road games there with Michigan State and Stanford. How about that? That's kind of tricky there for Boston College. You go on the road to play Michigan State, that week, and then you go back on the road again, but this time go out west to Stanford. Yeah, that's not going to be easy there for Boston College. And then they get a bye week right after traveling out west, so I think that's a pretty good spot for a bye week. You get time to recover after those back-to-back road games. And then you got California on September 27th. That'll be a home game there for Boston College. Then they go on the road to play Pittsburgh on October the 4th. Then there's that big game against Clemson on October the 11th. Then you got UConn on October the 18th. Then you go back on the road to play Louisville on October 25th. You come back at home to play Notre Dame on November 1st. Then you got SMU at home on November 8th. And then also Georgia Tech at home on November 15th. So you look at that stretch there from November 1st all the way to November 15th. They get 3 home games in a row in the month of November. So yeah, that's really a good sign there for Boston College. They're all 3 tough games here for Boston College. Georgia Tech game is pretty winnable, but SMU and Notre Dame are probably going to be tough games. And then they close things out before a bye week. They get a bye week before closing things out with Syracuse on the road on November 29th. So a tougher schedule compared to last year for Boston College in 2025. Again, you got Michigan State in the non-conference, and then you got Clemson at home. You also got Notre Dame at home and SMU, and then you got Louisville on the road. So yeah, that's kind of a tough schedule here when you got those 4 teams on this schedule, and then plus Michigan State in the non-conference. But let's now get a projection, and based off how tough this schedule is, this is not a prediction. This is simply a projection based on how tough this schedule is. If it's a 1% game in the red, that's pretty much going to be counted as an automatic loss. Your 20% games in the orange, those are games where Boston College will be about a double-digit underdog. 40% in the yellow, they'll be a clear underdog in that percentage. They'll be about a less than a touchdown underdog by like 6 or 7 points. And then your 50-50 games in the white, those will stay, of course, in the white. Those are games that really can go either way. 60% in the purple, Boston College will be favored by less than a touchdown, 6 or 7 points. 80% in the blue, they'll be favored by double digits, and then 99% in the green. That's pretty much your automatic wins. And we'll start with that percentage here first for Boston College. I think you can go ahead and put a couple of games on here in the green. You got Fordham and UConn. They absolutely should take care of business against Fordham. That game probably over that 95 to 99% mark. Again, that's an FCS team. Boston College should have no problems whatsoever against that team. And then UConn, I would probably put this game at that 90% to 94% mark. I don't think this is going to be an easy game for Boston College. We saw Boston College last year struggle against a Conference USA team in Western Kentucky. Could that be the case here against UConn? But this time it's in the month of October. However, UConn could be really better by this time, and I don't think that's a guaranteed win, but it's still counted as an automatic win because it's in the green. Now, if it was on the road at UConn, it would definitely be in the blue for me at 80%, and it would definitely be close to that 80% mark, but they'll still be favored by double digits, and the blue games also count as wins. But yeah, UConn is pretty much not a guaranteed win, but we'll count it as an automatic win here in this projection. But if I was a Boston College fan, I would not sleep on this team if you're a Boston College, if you're this Boston College team. So those are your two easy wins for Boston College. I think they'll be favored against Fordham by like 20 plus, even more than that, and then maybe UConn, they're only favored by 17. So yeah, that's your two easy wins. And then you look at the rest of the schedule, there's not really any other games on here where I can favor Boston College by double digits in the blue, and then also in the purple, they'll be favored by 6 or 7 points. I don't have any one of those games here that I think Boston College will be favored in some of these games, but I do have 4 games on here where I think Boston College is going to be an underdog in. They're not in the red or the orange, but they're in the yellow. And that's 4 games here in the yellow: Clemson, Louisville, Notre Dame, and SMU. I think all 4 of these games, Boston College will be 6 or 7 point underdogs, so by less than a touchdown. That means they have a chance here to probably pull off an upset somewhere. You got Clemson, Notre Dame, and SMU all at home. That's the reason why they do fall in the yellow. Now, Louisville was really close to being put in the orange, but because both teams, kind of were pretty close on the tiers and everything, Louisville is slightly a better team, but because it's at Louisville, that's the reason why Boston College is an underdog. If this game was at home for the Eagles, it would definitely be in the white as a 50-50 game, but as of right now, I think it's pretty much a yellow game here for Boston College. Again, I think they'll be, less than a touchdown underdogs here and 6 or 7 point underdogs in all 4 of these games. Again, Clemson, Notre Dame, and SMU. I wouldn't be surprised if Boston College ended up, beating one of these teams. I think they had the best chance against SMU because Notre Dame and Clemson are going to be tough games. But again, they'll be heavy underdogs in in all those games. Again, by less than a touchdown. So 6 or 7 points, somewhere in that range. And then that's going to leave you with a total of 6 50-50 games. You got Michigan State on the road, Stanford on the road, California, Pittsburgh on the road, and then Georgia Tech and Syracuse on the road. I think California and Georgia Tech are pretty even matchups. Those definitely really can come down to the wire. Stanford, just because it's on the road, that's the reason why it turns out to be a 50-50 game. Same thing for Michigan State, and then Pittsburgh and Syracuse. Those are pretty even matchups as well. I think they'll probably be underdogs against Syracuse just based off of what happened last year. And then obviously Pittsburgh, that's a game that really can go either way as well. So yeah, 6 total 50-50 games. Let's now get a projected record here for Boston College. Again, we count the green games as wins, and then you average out these 4 yellow games at 40%, and then you average out all 6 of these 50-50 games at 50%. And I think they're going to split these 50-50 games. They'll win 3 out of the 6. Again, you got 6 total 50-50 games. I think they split them. They win 3 out of the 6 50-50 games. So that's going to give you 3 50-50 wins, and then plus the 2 green games, that's going to give you a total of 5 wins, and that is what the projected record is for Boston College. It's 5-7 for 2025. To me, that's a pretty fair projection for Boston College. Again, this is a very tough schedule. It's definitely more tougher compared to last year. Again, Michigan State in the non-conference, Clemson, Notre Dame, and SMU, 3 big games at home. And like I said, I wouldn't be shocked if they probably won one of these games here at home against Clemson, Notre Dame, and SMU. Wouldn't be surprised if they beat Louisville on the road as well. I think best case, you would probably have to say 6-6 and making it to a bowl game. Worst case is probably 4-8 or 3-9. But if this team goes 5-7, it's because of this schedule. But if they go 6-6, that's still a really good year for Boston College. And if they go 7-5 again, yeah, this Boston College team is becoming a program that has a bright future. But that is my projection for Boston College for 2025. Again, it's 5-7. Do you guys agree or disagree? Let me know your thoughts about Boston College down in the comments below. Thanks for watching this video, and stay tuned for more sports content videos on my Lucas Ross Sports YouTube channel.